Howdy, folks. Welcome to the podcast Iron. My name is Laura Mullen Vermilia, and on this podcast, I interview members of the cast iron art community in order to inspire, educate, and spread ideas about iron casting and cast iron art. Our guest on today's show is Jay Elias, and I have to say that Jay's story is the most inspiring one that I've heard on this show. Jay, thank you so much for your open honesty and for your bravery in sharing your life story. We all can learn so much from hearing about your experiences. It really helps put many things into perspective, and also it helps us understand and relate to folks who have gone through similar experiences to what you've endured. Thank you for giving them a voice as well, and I'm so glad that we got to hang out for such a long time at the Down on the Farm Pour last weekend, and I'm even more glad that we've become such good friends. The Podcast Iron Show is sponsored in part by individual supporters on Patreon, so thank you to everyone who has joined as a Patreon member to help me afford the production costs of this show. And I'd also like to thank our top supporters of the show, which are Sloss Metal Arts, the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance, and I'm very excited to announce that we've got a new top supporter, and that is Crescent Creative. Crescent Creative is a digital design and fabrication studio located in Birmingham, Alabama. They utilize CNC router technology to produce foundry patterns, outdoor signage, furniture, and public art commissions. So if you have questions, they have solutions. You can find them on Instagram at Crescent Creative. So check them out and give them a follow. They are always creating interesting and artistic custom designs for their customers, and I really love seeing their products pop up on my Instagram feed. So thank you so much to Crescent Creative for becoming a top sponsor. Your support really means so much to us. Another top supporter of the show is the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance. They are a 501c3 nonprofit organization that consists of iron casting artists in the western states of the U.S. Their organization's goals are to educate, demonstrate, and exhibit cast iron art in the western region of the U.S. And one of the ways that they accomplish this is by organizing a conference every 2 years. So start planning to come out west for their conference in the fall of 2024. Typically, it's at the beginning of October, but not always. So just keep your ear to the ground. Obviously, there's no solid dates this far in advance, but I'll keep you informed when things start to develop. And rumor has it that the 2024 Western Conference will be in San Diego, California. And I just want to point out that you don't have to live in the western states of the U.S. to attend the Western Conference. You can live anywhere. So you should definitely make the trip out. They'll love to have you. A big thanks to the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance and their board members for the support of this show. For more information about this fantastic organization, visit their website, which is wciaa.org. Another top supporter of this show is the Sloss Metal Arts, which is a national center for iron casting and metal art. Based in Birmingham, Alabama, they host our national conference on contemporary cast iron art and practices every 2 years. To keep up to date on conference-related things, follow NCCCIAP on Instagram, but also follow Sloss Metal Arts on Instagram and TikTok, and they'll keep you up to date on all things Sloss-related and conference-related. Besides organizing and hosting the national conference, Sloss Metal Arts also has a year-long entire schedule, which includes cast iron bowl making classes, and the foundry is available to be rented out if you want to bring your class there or have an event with their artists. For more information about all of this, visit their website, which is slossmetalarts.com. And also, they are currently accepting applications for the fall Visiting Artist in Residence, and the deadline for this is August 25th. But all of the information is on their website, like I already said, so check it out and share it with people that you think might be interested. Thank you, Sloss Metal Arts. One more thing before we get into the interview, I just want to mention an upcoming opportunity for the display of your large outdoor artwork. The city of O'Fallon, Missouri hosts a rotating sculpture series called The Shape of Community. And The Shape of Community is a citywide sculpture exhibition featuring large-scale works of art in prominent areas throughout the city, which are loaned by artists for an 18-month period. Currently, there are 10 works installed, and you can see more details about that on their website. For those of you watching the video version of this, you can see that I have the web address on the bottom of my screen, and the link will also be in the show notes and the description boxes and all of that. But if you're listening to the audio only version of this, the easiest way to get onto their website is to Google The Shape of Community, O'Fallon, Missouri. And when you visit their website, you'll see that the cast iron art community is very well represented in this group of 10 sculptures presently installed. So you've got a good shot. Presently, we are a little less than 1 year out on the time frame for this call for submissions. They'll be jurying your entries in early March of 2024. So start thinking about what piece in your catalog you want to apply with, or even make a new piece for the deadline. You've got plenty of time. And if you have any detailed questions about this opportunity, please feel free to contact the Cultural Arts Coordinator of O'Fallon, Missouri, and that is Martin Linson. And his email is mlinson@ofallon.mo.us. And this is a great outlet for iron casting artists to showcase all the big, heavy metal works that we've been casting. So finally, let's get into this conversation with Jay Elias. Never forget that this episode is brought to you by our top supporters, Crescent Creative, the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance, and Sloss Metal Arts. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and please enjoy. Jay Elias, welcome. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, of course.
So let's just kick this off with, well, Jay, who the hell are you anyways?
Right. So my name's Jay, and I'm a father, a son, a brother, and just had a grandson. So now I'm a grandfather.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's pretty exciting. I just actually came from seeing him before the podcast, so that it's giving me all that good energy.
Yeah.
He's a really smiley baby too, so it's fun. So I'm a disabled veteran, and right now I'm just trying to figure out how to provide free art therapy to other veterans. And, I've been doing that like through grants and private funding, corporate sponsorship. So if you know anybody that loves to support veterans and loves the idea of free art therapy, definitely send them my way. So I'm definitely a cast iron junkie, and a lot of times I'm a groupie, just following pours around with my leathers, just ready to like break coke or break metal. I love breaking metal. I love charging furnaces. So that's one of the things I really love to do, is just chase iron pours around and be close to the furnace. Have an art studio in Detroit. It's called Evolution Art Studio. And I'm like currently trying to develop an art therapy based program that I call Mental Health. Sure, some people have heard of it. Probably a lot of people haven't. But it's kind of like, really focused on mental health issues that, not just veterans go through, but everybody really that I've run into, especially artists, are dealing with some kind of stuff, and nobody really likes to talk about it. So I found like that the metal really facilitates that kind of easily, in a way that you don't have to actually talk about it. It's nonverbal expression, and you can say things in the pieces that you make without ever saying one word. And 100 people could look at it and give you 100 different pieces of feedback on that, right? 100 different viewpoints, but it hits 100 people in 100 ways, and that's amazing. So to be able to connect with people without really having to talk about like your trauma or your mental health issues that you're going through, and just express it, through the artwork or whatever you're going to call it, art making. I think that's really powerful. And that's kind of like my passion right now is making that accessible to people. So I'm currently enrolled at Henry Ford College, community college. I'm graduating next, like in a couple of weeks with my associates. And then I'm enrolled at Wayne State University in their psychology program
Okay.
and finish up my undergrad there and hopefully get accepted into their graduate art therapy program.
Awesome. Well, good luck. But I think that your heart's in the right place and I think you're going to get it.
Yeah, we'll see how things shake out. Just got to stay focused and, you know, keep doing good things and good things will come.
They will. And I love that saying, see how things shake out. And I don't know if it's because of like the shaking out the mold
Yeah,
or
yeah, it's a
things
foundation.
yeah, if it hits close to home and it has like kind of dual meanings to me, but I like that you really that you said that. But yeah, that's all we can do is see
Yeah.
how it shakes out. So I want to kind of talk a little bit about your formative years and just kind of help me build you as a character. So just start where you want to start and we'll just go where you want to go.
So originally from New York, um, born and raised in Brooklyn, and you know, grew up in public schools, using public transportation in the city. So, my parents got divorced when I was really young, and my brother and I, because my dad worked a lot, and my mom lived far away, we kind of had to fend for ourselves, and it was the 80s, and we kind of grew up really fast on the streets, you know. Um, and I knew like that I couldn't hang around New York. I couldn't stay there and thrive because everybody I saw around me was just spinning their wheels and not really going anywhere. Like I'm first generation in higher education, in my family. Like nobody went to college in my family, and I just started like a couple of years ago, and I'm 54, so you know um, there was no prospect of school back then. It was either get a job or join the military, basically. There was no money for school, even if I wanted to go. It's not like, it is now where it's kind of easy to find money for school. But so I joined the military, I joined the Marine Corps, um, traveled all over the world, got to see a bunch of things, got to do a bunch of things. Um, you know, but it wasn't all like roses, There was a bunch of stuff um that I experienced in the military that was, pretty traumatic. And when I came home, like without even really addressing it, uh, just kind of like the attitude in the military is basically suck it up, that's what they teach you. That's how I was kind of brainwashed. So,
Mm-hmm.
nobody even really talked about PTSD back then.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I was kind of messed up when I came home right after the Gulf War, and uh, just like down a really bad path really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, did some things that I'm not really proud of and that I regret, and have a lot of remorse about. But uh, it kind of like put me in a really bad situation,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, I went to prison for a really long time. So a lot of my formative years, when you think about it, I did, so up until I was 18, I was basically, you're still a kid when you're 18, right?
You're still a kid until
And
you're
then,
25.
well, I'm just saying, like,
Yeah, I
in
know.
most people's eyes, you're still a kid till you're 18. So then I joined the military, and then it's like 4 years in the military, 11 years in prison. So that's another 15 years, of like basically just fighting for your life. Um,
Yeah.
so there's no time to really grow or mature or kind of like figure out who you are, your identity, and your identity is basically established the moment you step through the front door of a prison. Um, and you have to fight for that, you know what I mean? Like every day, until you get out. And
Okay.
then when you come home, it's pretty difficult. It's kind of similar to the military. They pat you on the back and say, "Hey, thanks for the ride and good luck. We'll see you next time." So coming home from prison was really hard too. So
Mhm.
you think about how I stumbled around for like maybe another 10 years after I was home from prison. You're talking about, I'm in my 40s now,
Yeah.
and just figuring stuff out for the first time, like really, you know. Um, so like the only artwork I really had during that whole time was basically in prison, which is pretty ironic, right? Um, but I started doing like some some soap carving. We would carve like bars of soap,
Hmm.
and make like little pianos or ducks or whatever. Some of these guys were really good, but I kind of got into that and without even realizing why at the time. But it was like just getting lost in that process, of
Yeah.
making something and like really intense, focused, intentional process. It just takes you out of where you are.
Hmm.
You're not thinking about anything but making that line perfect, at the perfect depth, at the perfect angle. So like I guess that's kind of how I was introduced to sculpture,
Yeah.
right? You would say,
Yeah.
in a real primitive way. But then I like got into model shipbuilding
Uh-huh.
and figured out how to like really get lost for hours and hours. And that's for me what it was all about when I started making the ship models was being able to escape
Hmm.
from the prison, because when I was building a model ship, I was part of the crew. I was laying down the planks on the deck. I was building cannons and making chains and rigging sails and learning all this stuff. And for hours, I was just sailing the seven seas in my mind.
Yeah.
So, like, the whole process of creating has that capacity to do that. So I think like that's where my real first exposure to like art and the creative process, and even though it wasn't considered like fine art or high art, so to
It
speak,
doesn't
it was
matter.
right. It was just that creative process, right? Of
Yeah.
like figuring things out. Like, how am I going to make a sail? Well, I'll rip a bed sheet and I'll smuggle some glue from maintenance locker
Hmm.
and some paint, and I'll glue it together and I'll paint it up and pull these strings apart and twist them up and make ropes. And
Yeah.
like there were so many things that I did to get creative to build these ships. I would cut cardboard and make layers of cardboard that looked just like wood when they were painted.
Yeah.
So it's kind of similar to like any other sculpture studio where you're using the materials that you have on hand to make something, right? That for me, that's where like all the power was in the making. But I still didn't realize it in jail, you know?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, for me, that was an escape at the moment.
Hmm.
I didn't realize like the true power of it until like later on, like years after I was released, and like just really caught up in like a really bad drug addiction.
Hmm.
I had started self-medicating and then just got, down the rabbit hole of drugs and alcohol, and
Yeah.
uh somehow found stone carving just on a
Yeah.
whim.
Uh-huh.
And that kind of like put me back in touch with that really primitive urge to make shit
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
like we all have it, right? Like
Yeah.
I would see stones and I would just see things in them and then try to bring them out, you know? So like got lost in the process of banging on rocks and carving rocks, sanding rocks for hours by hand, polishing them up to a mirror finish. And at some point, I guess I realized like this is really good for me and I
Mm-hmm.
need to be around more art and more artists.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like kind of living alone in the mountains in Puerto Rico at the time. Uh, I had bought a little house up there just to get away from like the world, you know, and sequestered up there. But it's not good to be alone, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And in addition to being lonely, there's no one to really like push you to get better at your craft. And I knew like that I was really starting to like carving stone,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So I wound up in Detroit at a time where it was like at almost its lowest point,
Okay.
you know. Um, and a good friend of mine lived here forever. He was born and raised here. And he was like, hey, now's the time to come to Detroit because everything's really cheap, you know, and you
Yeah.
could get in cheap. And there's a really cool art scene here. And I was like, man, I got to get out of Puerto Rico. So I just went for it,
Uh-huh.
you know, and I came to Detroit with like $300 in my pocket
Yeah.
and just figured it out, man. And I made it through the first winter, which was really bad. It was like a polar vortex winter. It was like 2013.
Okay.
And yeah, and it was like just storm after storm. Like every week was like 10 inches of snow. So when I finally like came out of hibernation in June, right? Because the winter
Yeah.
in Detroit don't end until like June, right?
Right.
So when I finally stumbled out of the house, I ran into these guys making art, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and they called themselves the 555
Okay.
and nonprofit gallery, right? So I found the place just by accident, and I wander in there, and the guy gives me a tour around the place. You know, this is the executive director of the nonprofit, and he showed me the gallery and he showed me the workshop, and I'm like, man, this is cool. Like I could make some stuff here, you know.
Yeah.
And then he's like, oh, come on, I'll show you all the artist studios, and takes me back, and it was like jail cells, you know, because it was an old jail.
Oh.
So, yeah, it was an old abandoned police station in Detroit that these artists turned into an art gallery. They're like, fuck it, you know, like nobody else wants it, let's take it.
Yeah.
So, but they pimped it out. It was like a dynamite gallery. But I didn't realize like in the back was all these jail cells, you know, and I'm like, what? I was like vibrating when I got back there, you know, and I'm just like, holy shit, I can't believe I'm in a jail. Like I wound up back in a jail. Like, what's that telling me? You know what I mean? So I hung around there and started helping them make like these large public sculptures, but like just from found objects. And uh, I was helping build this one sculpture out of milk crates. And you know, there's like all this activity going on in the parking lot, and these guys are running around, they're throwing sand everywhere. There's like, you know, forklift and they're putting stuff together, and there's, you know, all these things which I now know are sand molds, you know, lined up in rows. And I'm like, what are these guys fucking doing? Like, what are they doing, you know? And dude walks over and he's like, what's up, man? You know, you want to pour some metal? And I was like, what are you even talking about? You know, like I had no idea
Yeah.
about metal casting. And it was Casey, and he's like, you want to pour metal with us? We're going to pour some metal, you know, and like that's how it all started, like right in the parking lot. Like that's how I got my introduction to casting metal.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you had kind of told me a little bit more about the details of that story. They put you right on the live end.
Yeah. So, once I figured out what they were doing, I'm like, yeah, I want in. He's like, all right, go get some safety gear on. There's a table over there with a bunch of leathers and stuff. Just like make sure you look like everybody else. So like I get over there and everybody's getting dressed and I'm like, yo, help me get dressed. Like introducing myself to
Yeah.
people that I had no idea who they were.
Yeah.
They didn't know who I was. It was just like, all right, like they didn't ask any questions like, who are you? They're just like, okay, try this jacket on and put these bibs on. And these are called spats. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, I got, two different gloves on, like all
Yeah,
this. Yeah, you know the deal, right?
I do.
So yeah, so I'm like, yeah, I'm ready. And he's like, okay, you're gonna grab this over here, these two handles, and I'm gonna get on the other end, and we're gonna catch the metal right there in this thing, and we're gonna put it right there in that thing. And I was like, all right, let's do it. And like that was it. That was my like baptism by fire. It was pretty crazy, man. It was pretty crazy. First time ever experiencing molten metal, and we did it. We poured a bunch of like really cool pieces for a like a restoration project that he had been commissioned to do in the city, and that was a learning process too. You know, yeah, it was a lot of fun, and got to make a bunch of molds with him.
Mhm.
Uh, like after that pour, there was a bunch of other pours. We did a bunch of them at Cary. That's how I got introduced to the Cary crew.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, at Rivers of Steel. Um, Casey introduced me to them guys. And then yeah, that's kind of how it all started.
Yeah. And you were hanging out with them a lot too as time passed?
Like I would go out there with Casey
Uh-huh.
and whenever they would have a pour.
Okay.
So like I went out there to pour the plaques when they poured they did it was like one of the very first iron pours they did there. It was maybe
Okay.
the second one.
Okay.
And uh we were pouring all the plaques that were being installed around, the which it's now a park, right? It's now like a
Yeah.
national historic landmark.
Yeah.
Back then, I don't even know what the status was and for how long, but I think they had like just gotten their status as a national historic landmark. I know they've been a nonprofit for a long time,
Hmm.
but it was just really crazy to be part of that whole scene when it was first starting out. And then in the interim, like a lot happened, and Casey had some problems, and then eventually he passed away. So
Hmm.
they kind of like took me under their wing out there,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah, like I learned a lot from Ed and Paige, like a lot
Hmm.
about metal casting.
Hmm.
Ed Parrish and Paige Henry are like, you know, the closest thing I have to family that's not family.
Yeah.
So yeah, I consider them like family to me. So
Yeah. And that I feel like is one of the positive benefits of the cast iron community is you
uh,
find that you get that and you don't even expect it, but it is one of the beautiful kind of I don't even want to say it's a silver lining, but it's one of the positive things of this
yeah,
community.
it's definitely a perk. I mean, I was just telling somebody today, like one of the great things about it is like you can meet somebody once at an iron pour, and then the next time you see them, it's like you guys are best friends. It's like,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I do.
And then like that friendship just forms. Like you bond over like some parting line, or lay in the bed, or breaking metal on the metal pile, right? Like the metal pile, huge, man. So we could like talk about the metal
Do
pile.
you
I
want to
was
talk about the
thinking,
metal pile now? Let's talk
I
about
was,
the metal
I was
pile.
I was thinking you could you could do like a separate segment called Conversations from the Metal Pile. I
Yeah.
find like that whole process of breaking metal, like for me, is really, I don't know, it's such an integral part of what we do. Like the way I was taught it anyway, you know, the way, because Casey taught us to break these radiators, break these bathtubs. This is what we're melting. And they have to be this way, and the very intentional thing, right? And like, um, but like so many people approach it so differently. And it's interesting, like when you get to the metal pile and you're there with, like, let's say you're at a new pour with people that you never met, and it's a whole new crew and they have a whole new system and everybody does things differently. And it's like the main goal is to get the metal in the buckets and get it weighed so that it eventually goes to the furnace.
Right.
But the manner in which it gets there is different for everywhere, right? Like I've been to places that's totally different than the next. And that process of breaking down the metal, like the best conversations are had on the metal pile when people are breaking metal, especially like when it's all strangers, you
Yeah.
know? Like when I was at Sloss, we brought our own metal to the competition because I knew what they were gonna have that slinger shit from the pipes, the really skinny shit that I fucking hated, right? I'm like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm not putting that in my molds, like,
Yeah.
but so we brought radiators that, we broke up and
Yeah.
we had our metal, but I still made the guys go and I still made everybody on the team go to the metal pile. I'm like, go fill up a bucket of metal. I want at least one bucket of metal from everybody. And the reason why I did it was not for the metal, but it was to put them with them other people that they never knew that they
Yeah.
were going to sit there for a couple hours and be really intentional about what kind of metal they were getting. Because I'm like, they got to look like this,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, because it's like the first time you go to any other person's iron pour and you're going to break metal. So, like every time I go to Memphis or wherever, that's the first question you ask is how big should the pieces be? Because, like you said, like everywhere is different because it depends on the size, the size of the furnace will depend
Yeah.
on, and so because the wrong size metal, too small or too big, can mess it up. And
Yeah.
so it is something to be taken seriously. It is something to respect when when you're at somebody else's home turf. You got to respect the size. Is it a Dorito? Is it an orange or a lemon? Everybody has different and then you go some places like Hayes, Kansas, their furnace is so big they don't even break iron.
I
And like
know.
when they're doing a smaller, like if they're running Gus or something smaller, they will break iron. But if they're running the monsters, you know, they just throw the whole thing in
Dude,
there.
that furnace at Cary,
Yeah.
Gomer, I
Yeah.
swear, I love charging that furnace because we don't break metal. He just comes with the telehandler, puts a pallet of brake rotors up there, and the charge stand is like, I'm telling you, it's like so big you can have a party up there. Like I'll have a pallet of brake rotors, all buckets of Coke, like a fan, a cooler, and room for a couple of people. And we're just chucking brake rotors in that sucker. Whole brake rotors. It's amazing. It's like I don't know, the metal and the furnace, for me, that's where it's at. Making art, yeah, that's cool. It's fun to make stuff, and I really love doing it. But like facilitating that whole process, like making that process happen,
Yeah.
that's like the real making for me. I dig it. Yeah.
Yeah. And there needs to be more, well, I don't want to say there needs to be more people like you, but it's like there needs to be because for every person that's like you, there's a person that's just like the mold for they just like doing the mold, and so everything balances out. And
Oh
so
yeah.
you might not have any molds at a specific pour, but then you are helping make the people's components that they spent a lot of time on their molds. And so
Yeah.
like sometimes I have more fun going to an iron pour where I don't have any molds, because it's like at
Shoot.
Sloss, I had no molds. When I went
Yeah.
to, I just was at Iron Tribe, no molds, no
Yeah.
stress. I don't have to worry about where is it? Is it in anybody's way? I do make molds, but
Yeah.
there is something nice about just being able to enjoy the experience and then help all the people that are
Help people.
stressing about their molds.
Yes. Yes. How many people are just freaking out and you're like, hey, I'll ban that or
Yeah.
whatever. I'll wash that for you. Don't worry about it. I love going to carry and not bringing any mold.
Yeah.
And all I got to do is just help people in the workshop or jump on the charge stand. Like that for me is like the ultimate. I really love.
I gotta get out there. I was talking
Oh my God.
to some of them
They're
at
doing,
Sloss.
they're doing a big tour at the end of June.
I don't
That's
think I'm gonna be able to make it because I don't know what I'll be. I can't commit to that. It's too soon. It's too soon.
yeah.
But is there one in the fall? There's one in
Yeah,
the
there's
river.
the festival of combustion.
Okay. I think that's
I
the
don't think
one.
they run. I don't think they're going to run Gomer at that one. I think they cut Gomer back to like once a year. It's
Okay.
just such a big lift, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, running that furnace. The last time we ran the big furnace, it was like I don't know, like 8 tons.
Yeah. That's one
It,
thing. If you're gonna run a furnace that big, you have to have 8 tons of molds.
yeah, they had
I mean, I
that
bet
many.
yeah.
No, it was like they were pouring huge molds there, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got like a 400-pound sand capacity, one shot. So they were making like these giant molds, you know,
Yeah.
or yeah, really big pieces.
Yeah. I
But
gotta get out there. And I think I have to have Ed and Paige on just to get more information about it out. But that's like, I
good
feel
luck.
like
Those guys are kind of
yeah, I know. I
they,
know. You know what?
they kind of hide in the background and just make shit happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But that would
Well,
be interesting. I'd love to watch that podcast.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see how it shakes out. But that is somewhere that as I am slowly like knocking these different iron pours off of my bucket list, I'm also adding. So that's like one that's now been added is
Oh
I
well,
mean, I've always wanted to get out there, but
let's talk
now
about the one that's been most recently added to your bucket list.
it's coming up to pour with you.
The one in Detroit.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one in Detroit. You
Yeah.
got to make it to Detroit
I
now.
do. Yeah, because we talked about at Sloss, I want to come to Detroit and pour iron with you. So what does that look like? Is that something that like obviously it's in my agenda, but not on my calendar. So do we have like a date
Um,
or do we have
no, I try to do it. Yeah, so we do like I try to do a memorial pour for Casey every year.
okay.
Um, I was the one that inherited his furnaces because when he passed, you know his life was a little scattered, and
Yeah.
I just figured I'd hold on to them
Yeah.
if his kids ever wanted them for whatever reason, like they have access to his shit,
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and then what better way to like pay tribute or honor his memory than to run his freaking furnace every year,
Absolutely. I can't think of a
celebrate.
better way.
Yeah. So to celebrate his life, and it's good because you know we bring all kinds of people to the event, like first timers, a lot of first timers, which is great. We have them making molds or doing scratch blocks or whatever, so it's a lot of fun. And we get goofy. We have food. My wife usually makes food, so it's a good time. We just celebrate his life and the community that he gave me,
Yeah.
that I try to share now with other people. So you're more than welcome anytime to come, but especially.
And I'm sorry, I don't know what time of year that usually is.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's like around Halloween,
Okay,
like
like
the
in the
beginning in
fall.
November. Yeah, like maybe the first weekend in November.
Okay. Yeah, because I don't.
last weekend, October, first weekend in November,
Awesome.
kind of like however it falls.
Awesome.
Because, Halloween's tough because everybody's planning stuff for Halloween.
Yeah.
So it's tough to get people out to a Halloween for.
Mm-hmm.
But, we try to like time it like right around the first weekend of November.
November. Okay. I'll block off that area because I
Yeah, we
don't
have
really
a
have
pretty
much about that around that time. I don't have anything on the books yet. So that seems like a good.
good.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Is it?
So my buddy
Go ahead.
he lets us do it out at his farm. He's got like 10 acres.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah. So it's outside of Detroit. It's like by Toledo.
Okay. Ooh,
Yeah.
I'm writing it down.
Yeah, cool. No, you gotta come out
I
and
do.
pour some metal wool.
I
Yeah, yeah.
do. And
And
here.
that furnace is fun to run. It's a really fast furnace.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Just like all his furnaces are really fast. And yeah, it keeps metal flowing. That thing rips.
Fantastic. When I was writing that down, I looked down and saw the metal pile, and I know we already talked about it, but I wanted to tell you and everybody that's listening who doesn't know this already. So the name of this podcast, the podcast Iron, was actually developed on a metal pile.
There you
Like
go.
while I was breaking iron and
There you go.
and
That's it right there.
and so I think you probably met my buddy Clayton, but he was at Sloss and we were hanging around a lot together, and he was breaking iron with me and a couple of other people. And at that point I had the YouTube channel, so I was recording the breaking of the iron to be able to show the entire process, because a lot of times we show, now I'm getting excited. And so I'm not letting you talk very much. I'm sorry. But let me just finish this little anecdote. So I find
You're
that
good.
I want to show the whole process from like the radiators, and then you break it up, and then you like the whole process, because a lot of times it's easy for us iron casters to only film like maybe the furnace and maybe the pouring of the molten iron into the mold from the ladle. And it's like, but there's this whole mystery to non-iron casters, like my aunts and uncles and family, like, well, where are you getting that hot, soup
Yeah.
from? And it's like, well, it's like an old bathtub.
Yeah.
And so I was filming with a, camera on my hard hat, like a GoPro, and I was filming me hammering, breaking the iron. And I got the footage of me talking about, I want to start this podcast, and I was going to name it something else. And he says in the recording, I've reviewed the footage. He says, so you're really going to miss out on your chance to call it the podcast Iron? And I'm dead quiet. Just keep breaking, because I was like, I usually don't cuss. I don't usually cuss on the public ones, but I was like, God damn it. That's a good idea.
Yeah. No. I love it, man. I loved it. I love the title.
Yeah. So that was on a metal pile is where
Yeah.
the
No, so many good conversations happen at the metal pile.
yeah.
It's kind of amazing. People from like that would never ever normally get to meet each other, and
Yeah.
then they form this bond because they broke like a ton of metal together, and they're like,
Yeah.
yeah, you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
And you're like
Yeah.
sweating so much. So we were in Memphis, and it was May in Memphis, and it was like so hot, and you're sweating so much that like when you lift your head up, it looks like you're crying. That's how hot it was.
So I have a totally different approach to breaking metal. It's like one of my favorite things to do,
Okay.
other than charging the furnace,
Yeah.
right? But like I just use a really small hammer and I just tap it. You gotta just tap it the right way. After you use the big hammer to like
Yeah. Yeah.
get all the pieces off, and I just sit there and just tap, 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 tap. And I could sit there tapping away for like hours, man, and just break hundreds and hundreds of pounds of metal. And it doesn't bother me. And then you see people and they're just like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and there's metal flying everywhere, and you gotta
Yeah, you got to
When I
suit
break
up.
metal, when I break metal, I don't wear spats.
Yeah.
I don't wear I don't wear I don't wear nothing. I don't even wear gloves.
Uh-huh. Because you
Like
don't
I
have
just sit
to.
there. You don't have to. The metal kind of speaks to you after a while, and you get to just know where to hit it, and just with just the right amount of force. I don't know. It's one of those things, man. I really love breaking metal.
It's funny. So now I am a New Englander at heart, but I went to school in Georgia, and that's where I learned how to cast iron. Actually, was in Georgia, in the heat, in the Georgia
Right.
heat. And I'll tell you, there ain't no radiators in Georgia. It's
It's all pipe.
it's brake rotors.
Oh,
It's
brake
brake rotors.
rotors.
And
Oh,
I'll tell you, brake rotors, and you know everybody that's broken brake rotors, but it's like if that's the whole metal pile is brake
yeah.
rotors, because all of the intro to sculpture kids already broke the bathtub, the one bathtub, and they already broke it at like 10 a.m. during their
Yeah.
class. And you get there and because you wait until the sun goes down, and it's just brake rotors, and you're like, okay. And I you won't it won't show on the screen, but I was breaking brake rotors with out gloves on, and one piece came and smashed me in the left hand. I'm like, what hand is this? In my left hand. And of course it swelled up. And of course it was like the night before the pour. And so then I had to be like
Sure.
holding ladles and lifting buckets and everything. But so if you look at my left, like, our bodies are amazing things because you can really see a lot of your experiences that would be invisible to other people. But I can tell that it's swelled up and it never went down to match my other hand.
Wow.
And so now I'm like, well, I learned my lesson. If I'm going to be breaking, if I'm going to be breaking brake rotors, I got to wear gloves, because if I had been wearing gloves, it would have saved me that, like, the
Yeah.
impact. It would have just saved me as much impact, and the cut, it cut me. And so it's, but I've had that experience with the little tiny, um,
Do
radiators,
you
like the
know
little,
Alyssa? Do you know Alyssa Toninato?
yeah,
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 feline.
yeah, yeah,
She's she's the best. So what they did, right? We want to talk about process.
yeah,
So what they did was they got their foundry to like add these little add-ons to their gating systems for like brake rotors because they cast a lot of brake rotors.
uh-huh,
But they added like just this little thing, and it's just like a round chip that's got like perforations, and they shake it out with their shakeout, and then they collect them
uh-huh,
and they give them to Alyssa as a donation. And those things, all you got to do is tap on because they're already perforated. Like they got,
yeah.
you know, yeah. It's so, and they're like shaped just like Doritos,
And
and you
they're the
just
perfect
pop them.
size. That's
They're
cool.
the perfect. Yeah, man,
She
really cool.
she has made some amazing connections in the cast iron industry. Like, and I think it's facilitated a lot of what she's been able to do. So,
It's because of Alyssa that I went to Sloss for the first time.
yeah, I missed seeing her this year, but I know, like,
We just had a
she
baby.
just had a baby, and
Closing down American Skillet. I don't know if I should say. I don't know. Yeah.
well, she was starting in the last time I spoke to her, she was starting the new business with the custom
The waffle iron.
waffles. So I
Yeah.
haven't heard about how it's been going, but I hope it's been going. I hope it's so busy that that's why, like, she's just so tied up with, having two
Yeah.
kids and having a new business, and that she's really excited about. Because when I talked to her about it, she was like, she had just started the waffle up, and they already had a couple of commissions, like,
Yeah.
in the works, and that's when they launched it, because they knew they already had a couple. And so I'm hoping, well, so I heard that you're going to be maybe going to the down on the farm pour.
My first one. It'll be
Okay.
the 20th anniversary.
Me too. I'm
Yeah.
ready. I bought my tickets and I put in for the rental car and I'll be there.
I'm not much of a camper, but I'm gonna do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna do it.
I mean,
This old body don't take to camping too well anymore.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's things like air mattresses and stuff. There's luxuries that, there's luxuries
Yeah.
that might help it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't
No,
know.
I'm pretty sure some folks got it figured out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I just gotta get it dialed in.
Yeah, but
It's
we've
gonna
got
be fun,
time.
man. Yeah, he's talking about it's gonna be like over 100
Oh
people. So
shoot.
yeah,
It's
man.
going to be a party though. I'm really excited because I've never been and that's been a bucket list thing. And so I'm hoping that Alyssa will be there just
Oh
because.
yeah, she's gonna be there.
Okay, good, good. I should
Yeah,
touch it.
yeah. I don't think she's missed one, but it's cool. It'll be my first one too.
Yeah. And it
Yeah,
makes me feel like, I mean, obviously I'm comfortable going because I know Kelly so well. Like, I mean, I've known him for over 10 years, but I also
yeah.
feel like it's his house. He's going to be really busy, and so knowing that you're going to be there is like, okay, at least I can hang out with Jay while I'm there. And if Alyssa's there, and then of course, like I'll get there. It's like everything. It's like you get there and then you're like, oh, there's so
All the
many
other
people
people
that I
can do it.
know here.
Yeah, 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 of
Yeah.
course. Yeah, yeah, of course.
So here's one. Have you been to sculpture trails?
Oh, so part of the Sloss experience, the first time I went to Sloss was in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And I had in 2017, I was having trouble here in Detroit, like finding iron pours. Casey had already left. He was having trouble, personal troubles.
Yeah.
And I was here. I had furnaces. I didn't know how to run them. We tried to run one and blew the bottom out and whatever. It was a total failure.
Yeah.
But I'm like trying to figure out where am I going to pour metal? And my buddy Carl from the 555 says, "Hey, there's this person in Madison that pours metal every year. You might want to check it out." She pours on Valentine's Day, and I was like, "Oh, it's right up my alley. It's coming up."
Yeah.
So I called her out of the blue, and I'm like, "Hey, can
Yeah.
I come pour metal with you guys?" And she was like, "Hell yeah!" So I like literally drove through a freaking blizzard
Can I wait?
to
Can I
get.
just stop you for a second though? Because I can hear her voice saying, hell yeah. Anyways, you know how she talks? She'd be like, hell yeah. Anyways,
So
so you drove
I
through a
showed
blizzard.
yeah, I drove through like a blizzard, show up with this little Ford Escort loaded with like 600. I had like 600 pounds of charges in the back seat. I had molds already made, banded up, ready for metal. Like I brought coke, I brought everything, right?
Yeah.
And I roll up in this, and there's so much snow. And I was like, the first time I met them, man, it was like hugs and hey, made it, and blah blah blah. And it was just like the whole family just welcomed me in, and it was like my long lost family.
Yeah.
And we had a crazy pour. It was awesome. And she's like, you know, you should check out Sloss. And I was like, what's Sloss? And she's like, man, that's where the iron casters go. That's where the community is. She's like, you want to run furnaces? You want to, meet people that pour metal? Go to Sloss.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right. And then I met I don't know if you know Gabby Finn.
Yes. Yeah. She's
Gabby,
finishing up her MFA right now, right?
yeah, she just had a show.
Like, right.
She's like an amazing, amazing dear friend. I like think of her as like the daughter that I didn't have,
Yeah. Yeah.
But she showed up like right after that.
Mm-hmm.
She showed up in Detroit from Chicago.
Yeah.
She had just finished that SAIC, and she was looking for a place to run her furnace, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, where is it? Go get it.
Yeah. Bring it right
Oh, go get
here.
it. She was like, when? I was like, go get it right now. We can go, we can melt some metal right now. And she,
Yeah.
and that was, but then, she hit the ground running and she was like, oh, I'm going to Sloss. And I was like, what? I want to go
Yeah.
to Sloss,
Yeah.
So then
Because
I
in
went with Gabby.
2019, she was on the committee. Yeah.
Yeah. So I went down. That's when I met Emily, Emily Baker,
Mm-hmm.
and like the whole crew, like just the whole Iron community just was like our long lost brother.
Yeah.
Like they just welcomed me with open arms, and
Yeah.
that was it, man. That was it. It was Sloss was an amazing thing. So I met Jerry at the Sloss in 2019.
Yeah.
And it was just brief, but I was just like totally intrigued by the way his process is and the way his brain works
Yeah.
because everybody's got that different approach, right? And he's like, oh, I start with the core. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I do them inside out. And I was like, all right, show me, And I saw the stuff and I'm like, holy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But he didn't really like because in 2019 I was like, you know, hadn't even lined a furnace yet, really on my own.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
Sloss, 2019 in Sloss was the first time I had ever relined a furnace by myself,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So like I was still like an utter greenhorn noob,
Yeah. Which I
even
mean,
though
if
even
you're,
though I had
I want to say, because we got to say, if you're listening to this and you've never lined a furnace before, this isn't bad. It doesn't
no,
like
no,
what
no,
Jay's like trying to explain to us where he was in his journey. And so
yeah.
you weren't in a
So
bad place.
when I met Jerry Massey for the first time,
Yeah.
it was at Sloss. And like I said, I was just reaching out to the community. So I
Yeah.
was kind of like you mentioned earlier, an unknown. Like nobody knew who I was. I didn't have affiliation with
Mm-hmm.
anybody.
Mm-hmm.
People like, oh, where'd you go to school? And I'm like, like
Yeah.
so then this time when I saw him again
Yeah.
at at Sloss, it was a whole nother vibe because
Yeah.
now I was like in the student cupola competition
Yeah.
and we kind of like did really well.
Yeah.
And we were talking about it. He's like, oh, you're from Detroit. That's right. He's like, well, you guys got that furnace over there. And I was like, yeah. And we started talking.
Yeah.
I was like, don't you remember me from 2019 over there in the sculpture garden? You were telling me. He's like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because he
And
had won the Charles Hook Award, I think, in 2017. And so in 2019, that's when all of his pieces. So you really got a like history lesson in his work, seeing that
yeah, I
all.
saw all those pieces set up in the courtyard
Yeah.
there. It was, yeah. So
Yeah.
it was, it was cool because after he realized that I was oh, that's the guy from Detroit.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, that's Evolution Art Studio. He's
Yeah.
like, dude, why don't you bring that funny little furnace down to Sculpture Trails and run it on Fire Night? He's like,
Yeah.
we'd love to have you as a guest furnace. So he invited me to Trails this year to run as a guest furnace at Fire Night. So,
Are you
woohoo!
gonna?
Hell
Okay,
yeah!
good. Because I'm gonna be there. I'll
Are
see you.
you kidding me? I'm not passing that up.
No, okay, so we'll see each other at the down on the
At
farm
Kelly's
pour
and at Trail.
first, and then at
Yep.
Trails.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
yeah.
won't be there for the whole 2 weeks. There's no way I could do the
Oh
whole two
no,
weeks.
I listen,
Yeah.
brother. So I live in the St. Louis area, and so it's about
Yeah.
a 3-hour drive for me to
Yeah.
go from where I live to Salisbury, Indiana, and Trails. And so I'll
Yeah.
probably arrive on like Friday night, and Fire at Night is on Saturday.
Yeah. We'll probably get there Friday in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And then we'll probably leave Sunday,
Yeah. Last year I
But
had
I
a
can't wait. Can't wait.
Oh my gosh, I had so last year I actually have a YouTube video about
All right.
my trip because I had something for my day job on that Friday night. I had exhibition opening and I couldn't get out of it, so I couldn't leave for Indiana until Saturday morning. So I left on Saturday morning and I got there Saturday afternoon, and I was there for like less than 24 hours. And I felt like I
Yeah.
had been there for a week. Like it's just like just
There's a lot going on.
there
I
was
know.
so many people that like old friends and new friends, and meeting all the interns who are just kind of getting into it. But that's like a really hardcore way to get into iron casting, is
Oh man,
to be
no,
a trails intern. Whew. Like, I mean, you learn, but like,
yeah,
talk about trial by fire.
them guys put in work.
Yeah.
Yeah, them
It's,
guys put in work.
yeah. But I think that you get
Like
so much out of it.
30,000 pounds of sand,
Yeah.
right? They go through.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
a ridiculous amount of sand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that,
Awesome.
okay. Wow. We're filling up so that's what happened why I couldn't go to Alyssa's pouring your heart out this past
Oh, man.
February. I sent her a message and I was like, Alyssa, because I had promised her on the
Oh,
podcast
you gotta
that I
go.
was
You
gonna
gotta go.
go. And
You gotta
I
go. It's
sent
awesome.
her an email and said I can't come this year because I wanted to go to uh the Iron Tribe in New Mexico. And there was a rumor that
Yeah.
Iron Tribe might be the last Iron Tribe. And so I was like, I gotta go.
Really?
I don't think it is. I think that the community down there is obviously really strong, and I think that it'll keep going. But
Yeah.
we'll see how it shakes out.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's the last of the Iron Tribe, but it may be under new management. And rightfully so. I mean, David Lobdell did a really great job for a really long time, but it's okay to, turn things over to a younger generation and be able to
Shift change.
shift
It's a
change.
good thing.
Yeah.
It's
Anyways,
a
let's
good.
see. Should we? I feel like we've bantered quite a bit, and I want to make sure that I'm
Yeah.
not taking up your air. So
Let
you
me
talked
see.
about,
Why did I continue iron casting?
yes, that's the thread. Let's grab
So
it.
basically, I didn't really have a choice. Like it kind of grabbed me and didn't let me go,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And after I met Gabby, right? Um, you know, we came back from Sloss and we were like, because I had Casey's furnaces, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we were like, let's run the furnace, like, and I was like, yeah, let's do. So uh, we ran um the one that I copied for the student cupola competition. The one we ran this year at the student cupola competition was basically like almost a clone of a furnace that he had built with his students and he competed at Sloss in 2005 with that furnace,
Okay.
and they did well. So I was like, let's just clone that
Yeah.
one,
If it ain't broke,
no,
you know
well,
what I
whatever.
mean?
I made some changes to it,
Yeah.
just made it a little bigger, whatever, but it was basically the same furnace.
Yeah.
And you know, like when I first tried to run it, we blew the bottom out. I didn't know what I was doing, didn't know how to set I didn't even know how to set the bottom. But when we came back from Sloss, I had run a furnace, uh like helping to run a furnace.
Uh-huh.
And I kind of was just like jazzed
Yeah.
when I came back in
Yeah.
2019. So we set up the little 10-inch, and me and Gabby put it together. We had our whiteboard, we had our checklists on checklists, and I had Casey on the phone.
Yeah.
Like, he was like talking me through it. He's
Yeah.
like, okay, now, put the 2 year covers on and turn the blower on. Like he was like walking me through all the steps
Yeah.
to like, and we did it, man. We poured fucking metal, and it was Halloween, and
Yeah.
it was like, we did our Halloween pour,
Yeah.
and we pulled it off. And then like a couple of days later, you know, his, his mom called me. I'll never forget it. I was in Home Depot. It was like 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning or something. And she was like, Jay, this is Casey's mom. And I was like, what's up? And she told me that he had passed away, you know.
Yeah.
But man, it was like a couple of days after I had just run the furnace for the first time by myself with no help. Like,
Yeah.
and like that, for me that was the thing. That was the connection
Yeah.
kind of to him,
Yeah.
was like, I don't know. And it just came together, the whole mental health thing,
Yeah.
because like at that time, that was like a really critical moment in my life in a lot of different ways because I had like just started really getting into a lot of deep shit in therapy at the VA. I finally,
Yeah.
after so many years, I finally broke down and just like went for help. Like I needed some mental health help.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it anymore by myself. I had to talk about what had happened to me,
Hmm.
and what it was making me feel,
Yeah.
and I had to try to figure out how to deal with that. So
Yeah.
like literally I was in therapy when all that happened,
Yeah.
So to lose him like at that moment was really tough for me, you know. So I kind of like made it my mission like to turn what I was doing into something that could help people get through really hard shit.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? Yeah, 'cause like, he struggled with a lot of shit, like just like we all do.
Yeah.
And I just feel like, I don't know, like it could have helped him more than it did, and I kind of feel like that's kind of why I continue using
Hmm.
cast iron and the process. Um, you know, not so much as a form of artistic expression, but as a means to help people express themselves and like find peace and heal from fucking
Yeah.
trauma.
Yeah.
That's basically what it's all about. For
Yeah.
me, that's really like what it's all about.
Yeah. And I think that obviously you're not alone in that because there
Yeah,
are so many of us, but we all come at it from different, you know, my just to just to make it about me for a moment, but not like, but seriously, like I struggle with connection and like I have this almost like insatiable or not like an unquenching need for connection to other humans. And so that probably is why now I'm doing this podcast and trying to connect to so many people. But it's like the act of pouring iron is kind of like a really fast way to bond and connect and build trust. And so that's how it helps me battle my childhood wounds, and you're talking about how it's helping you. I think that Andrew Marsh is another example of um like I think an upstanding example of using iron and iron casting
yeah,
and what it can do to express himself and his needs and help
yeah.
meet his needs. And so I think that
Well, all these people are like people that I look up to in the community and get inspiration from. And I met Andrew at the first loss,
yeah.
and he told me his story, and it like it just brought everything together for me, like
Yeah, and he would
and then
have been the
right after
chair
that,
at that time. He was the
yeah,
chair of the conference
yeah,
then. Yeah.
yeah, 2019, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and then right after that, obviously, was the pandemic.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
right after, and that whole, ordeal was just another whole traumatic thing that I like tried to work through. Like,
Yeah.
if you go back and like check out my Instagram, that's when it started. My Instagram started in like 2019 when I came back from like right after I came back from
Yeah.
Sloss, not too long after that. And it was like because I had joined this organization called Bunker Labs, which is like a veteran small business incubator.
Mhm.
And they're like, you need social media. You know, like one of
Yeah.
their, it was one of their bullet points. You
Yeah.
know, it's like, you know, you can't be a business without social media. So so I opened up some social media accounts, and Instagram was one of them. But I had no idea what I was doing
Yeah.
because they were just like, do it, and I was like, all right, I do it, and I
Yeah.
did it. And you know, nobody told me that you got to like actually work that shit, you know, to build, like, you know, to build a brand.
Yeah.
So at first I was just posting pictures and no hashtags, no nothing. I had no idea what I was
Yeah.
doing. But then the pandemic hit,
Yeah.
like right after I started my Instagram account. So like you could actually like go back and see almost the entire evolution of mental health
Yeah.
on my Instagram account,
Yeah.
right? And it happened like right during the pandemic. You know, I started like really exploring that process of making stuff. I got because we were locked in.
Yeah.
The governor was like shelter in place, and I was just like freaking out because I'm like, what the fuck? What does that even mean? Shelter in place? Like, what are they fucking talking about?
Yeah.
Like, we can't go out? What do you mean we can't go out? Like, am I back in prison? I
Yeah.
was freaking out, right?
Yeah.
But luckily, I had the studio
Mhm.
at the 555,
Yeah.
and I was able to just go there because it was a friggin' abandoned warehouse in the middle of Detroit. Nobody was going to go anywhere near it, not on a normal day, much less a pandemic day,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So I was able to like have access to it. And I just locked myself in the studio for
Mhm.
like 3 weeks, man,
Mhm.
and just got really deep into making waxes, even just the whole process of cleaning a space, you know, and like transforming a space from a chaotic mess into a workable studio where you could have workflow and things are set up for you to, you know, just to facilitate that art making process. Like you can see it all, you know, it's all documented. And yeah, like that's kind of when mental health started. I'm like, how am I gonna provide free art therapy
Mhm.
for people that really need it and can't fucking afford it? Like, I was in therapy at the VA. Thank God the VA fucking took care of me.
Yeah.
How many people I know that need fucking mental health services, they can't get a person to talk to.
Mm.
They got an app now. Fucking use an app? Are you kidding me? Like, you know, I need face to face. I need to sit down and talk with somebody.
Yeah.
And like that's what mental health is. It's like, hey, we're sitting down, we're playing with sand, we're
Yeah.
playing with clay, right? Now I do workshops with, you know, people who have been incarcerated.
Mhm. Yeah.
I've done a lot of work with you know, juvenile lifers. I
Mhm.
don't know if you're familiar with the term juvenile lifer, but it's somebody who was sentenced to life in prison as a juvenile, and it's kind of incomprehensible,
Yeah.
but it happens a lot more than you think. You know,
Yeah.
somebody comes home from prison after 40 years and they feel useless, you know, they feel irrelevant, they feel outcast and different than everybody else. It almost feels like you have this thing on you that everybody could see, you know. When I tell people nowadays that, you know, I was locked up for 11 years, they're like, what? I never would have thought that, you know, but
Mm.
it still feels like everyone could see it on me, you know, even though it's a personal thing in my head. It's just a weird thing that it's kind of like one of the after effects of being in prison.
Okay.
So, you know, doing this type of work with people kind of like really helps them move past that
Yeah.
and realize like, hey, I'm not alone out here. I'm not different. Like other people are feeling the same shit that I'm feeling. And, you know, we're gonna figure out how to get through it together, you know. And then the artwork creates a lot of conversations, even just sitting and squeezing clay, like I did a workshop like before Sloss, and one of the participants was like, "Oh, I'm not really creative, And I'm like, neither am I, so what? Like, I'm not an artist. Don't worry about it. And she was just like, "Is it okay if I just sit here and squeeze the clay?" I was like, "That's why you're here, right? Like,
Yeah.
squeeze that fucking clay."
Yeah.
And 2 hours later, at the end of the workshop, she had a fucking smile from ear to ear. And she was just the whole time and if that's what does it, like, you know what I mean? She was talking
Yeah.
and smiling. And hey, when you come into a spot and you're all like, arms crossed and you're all really tense, and by the end of the session, you're smiling and laughing and talking with people, like there's something there. There's something
Yeah.
effective there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even if it's just squeezing clay,
Yeah.
right? Like, if that's all it takes to engage that, that's all it takes,
Yeah.
So I don't know. For me, uh that's kind of what does it,
Yeah. And that's great.
you know.
That's a gift, to give.
Yeah.
You were
Being able to
given,
provide that.
and yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it was given to me like that, like uh just freely. It wasn't like, hey, you got to pay for these classes or whatever. It was like, hey, break this metal and I'll teach you how to melt it.
Yeah, I'll
And I
teach
was
you
like,
how to
all right.
make a sand mold. Yeah.
But like, so trying to figure out how to like provide that experience for people
Yeah.
for free, because not everybody could afford it, right?
Hmm.
It was kind of tough. So that's when I was like, during the pandemic, one of my buddies was like, "Hey man, you poor metal, why don't you make me some weights? Cause
Right.
I can't
You
find
couldn't
weights
find
anywhere."
them. Yeah, they were
You
all
know?
sold out because
Yeah,
everybody was trying to
you
work
could
out at home. I remember. Yeah.
yeah. So he was like, "Why don't you make me some weights?" And then I was like, "Oh, that's a pretty good idea."
Yeah.
Like, if I would have had my shit together and I really could have like got mobilized really fast enough, I probably could have done really well during the pandemic with that. But it was a learning
Yep.
process.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm learning about foundry patterns now and how to interact with foundries, and you know what's a match plate and what's a
Hmm.
beam P. Like, all these different terms are coming at me, and so it was a huge learning curve. But I managed to like get a foundry pattern made where I can make kettlebells, and that's how I kind of support my program.
Hmm.
Is I make the kettlebells and I sell them, and I could do custom ones for people.
Hmm.
So that's kind of how I've been just getting by, supporting the program, and then people get really generous,
Awesome.
and got like a donation of like 10 tons of sand from one person,
Wow. Yeah.
which that's it's kind of a lot
Yeah.
for a little guy like me.
Yeah.
you know Barrels of resin, you get bags of refractory clay. I just got the craziest. So anybody out there, I'm throwing this out there because you guys are all my cast iron peeps. Anybody needs pattern wax, like to make waxes for like ceramic shell. I just got a titanium foundry here in Detroit that basically will give me as much wax as I want, like for free. Like, they order wax, they use it in their investment castings, and then they melt it out and then they throw it away. They literally throw away like thousands of pounds of wax. And I'm just like, yo, give it to me.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, fuck yeah. So now they just give me all their wax. So now I have like casting wax out the ass. And I brought like 100 pounds of it
Oh,
with me to Sloss, just like to give it to him, like, here, man,
yeah.
take some of this.
That's
You
awesome.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was cool.
Because it's like there's certain places that are kind of like people will go to Birmingham to get Coke. And so it's like if people need wax, they can go up to Detroit and get it from you. And we'll have this whole
Looking forward to
network.
Detroit.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Which is
Yeah, I need to find a place to stash
yeah,
it.
that's another
It's a
resource.
lot.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then it's like every week they're like, "Hey, we got some more." So it's great.
More and more. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's let's see. So I'm
yeah.
trying to see if we want to kind of go to what you got hot on the horizon.
Hot on the horizon, right? Pouring all summer. Gardenship art. You know Josh Knoblich.
No, this is somebody I don't know.
Oh man, Josh is the best. So they're in New Jersey,
Okay.
um, in Kearney. That's coming up this weekend. Um, the amazing thing is when I first got locked up,
Uh-huh.
right? I passed Kearney, New Jersey. Like his studio is literally like right next door to the jail where I was. Yeah,
Wow.
when I first got locked.
Okay.
So like this is coming full circle for me in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
There's that recurrent theme of jails. It keeps coming back to me. The whole prison contract labor thing that we learned about at SLOSS, how they used to use convict labor
Mhm.
in the coal mines, and it was like all throughout the whole cast iron process. It was like huge for me to learn a lot of that stuff.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, Gardenship Art in New Jersey, Carrie in June,
Mhm.
then Kelly down on the farm in
Mhm.
July, and then also in July is Trails,
Mhm. At the end of
at the
July.
right, and then August we're gonna do something here in Detroit.
Okay.
It's gonna be at a friend of mine's. Friend of mine has a spot like here in the city that we're going to be able to pour at,
Awesome.
which would be really cool.
So everybody
What
keep
else?
keep post you'll keep everybody posted on Instagram as the developments
Yeah,
get. And if you keep
yeah.
me
I
posted
kind of
too, I can talk about it on the podcast. I can say this date coming up, more information. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, we're not trying to get like, big. We
Oh,
just
okay.
do it to have fun.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And we just do it to have fun and like anybody that wants to show up and just have a good time, make some molds, throw down some metal, eat some good food, have some good laughs. We always try to go to the Schwitz afterwards. You know about the Schwitz?
No.
It's like 100-year-old Russian Jewish bathhouse. It's
Oh,
like a
okay.
it's an old sauna. It's like an old traditional Russian banya,
Okay.
and it's like a hidden gem here in the city of Detroit.
Okay.
So it's a great place to go.
Oh, yeah.
Take a lot of heat. They got the cold pool.
Mm.
There's a really nice restaurant upstairs where you can get a nice steak. And yeah, it's good after iron pour activities for
Yeah.
sure.
That sounds like the best thing I've ever heard. Right after an iron pour, a little hot, a little cold exposure, a little some protein. Yeah.
Yeah, man. No doubt. Um, yeah, that's what's going on. And man, anybody wants to come and throw down metal at any given moment, just give me a holler. I'm one of those. I'm like dropping a hat, Matt. You want to pour some metal? Let's do it. I always got some molds I could ram up.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah.
And hopefully I'll be up. Hopefully I'll be up in the fall, end of October, beginning of November time about then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can make a kettlebell.
Yeah.
Cast iron discus.
Cast iron
Be
Disney
careful.
kettlebell. I'll
Be
tell you.
careful, mom. Be careful, mom's
I
gonna
know,
hear
I know.
that.
I just swore I have to like not. But I've wanted to make my own kettlebell for. It's a longer story than I care to tell right now. Maybe I'll tell you in the after show. It's really not that exciting, but I've tried to make a kettlebell before, and it was It
Really?
was not a great success. I'll tell you about it later. It's not that exciting of a story. It's the story of every single person's failed mold. You know what I mean? Like it's like I tried and it didn't work. It's all fine. I'll tell you later. It's not that exciting. Um, but well, you have to give us your advice.
Yeah, the advice I could give to anybody who's trying to get into iron casting or wants to know more about it is never give up. Just don't stop trying. Just keep looking. Sooner or later, you're going to hit it. And when you hit it, you're going to know that you hit it and it's going to stick. If it was for you, it's going to stick, you know? So that's the best advice I can give anybody. Don't quit.
And it's amazing to me how we as human beings never get tired of hearing, don't quit, keep going, keep moving,
Yeah,
keep your chin
yeah.
up. Like it's amazing how
Well,
much.
as bad as it ever gets, don't fucking quit. Don't fucking quit. You know, like that's the only thing I could say.
Yeah.
You know, it sounds pat, but
But it's
like
not.
that's the advice I give. That's the advice I give to myself when I'm at my lowest lows. All right, don't fucking quit. Something's coming. Don't quit.
Yeah.
And sure enough, you know, look at me now.
Yeah. It will come.
Graduating with honors.
Mm,
Huh?
yeah.
Studying psychology. Who would have thunk it? Yeah.
You've got great things. You've got great things coming.
Thanks.
Well, I'm I'm at 13% on my battery life for my camera. So
Perfect time.
I know because we'll wrap it up and then go over to the after show. Let's see. So, is there anything else? Do we want to tease what we're going to talk about in the after show?
It's up to you.
I mean, do
What do we
any of
have
these
for?
questions strike a spark of interest? Like, what was your favorite iron pour or your favorite a favorite?
My favorite place to pour metal is at Carry Furnace.
Okay. I want to, obviously I have to go there, but
Pittsburgh is the shit. Pittsburgh is the shit, man.
yeah,
There's a really good art community in Pittsburgh. They're all about the arts there,
nice.
you know.
I mean, I think that as, Carry Furnaces and their programs have been growing, I've been seeing more of a presence and like I'm signed up for their newsletters. And so I like get their newsletters and read their little blurbs, informational blurbs. And it just really kind of makes me jazzed to get out there and see what is going on. So, well, maybe we'll talk more
It's
about,
amazing. It's amazing for me to watch the evolution of that place. Just since I've been involved, it's been going for, you know, decades, but just since I've been involved,
yeah.
like the progress has been just crazy, man.
Well, let's talk about like all of this stuff, but we'll go on over to the after show. So, for the public audience, we want to say thank you so much for tuning in today, for listening and watching. And Jay, thanks so much for being on the show today. It's been like a blast talking to you and really getting to
Thank you.
connect with you and learn more about you. Cause you were a stranger at the beginning. I mean, we met at Sloss and talked a
Yeah.
little bit. And but now I feel like you're my brother. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
All right, let's
Appreciate
go
it.
over to the after show. Everybody else, oh, come on over to the after show. Sign up for
All right,
Patreon.
let's go.
It's Thank you so much for tuning in today. This conversation doesn't have to end here. To gain access to the after show where Jay and I continue our discussion, visit the website patreon.com/thepodcastiron. And their supporters at any contribution level get access to the after show recordings from each episode that has ever been published. So if you're new here, the after show is just an extra 15 to 20 minutes, sometimes more, with each show's guest where we talk a little more candidly and share at least one more story behind the privacy of a paywall. So yes, if you sign up now, you'll get access to listen to Jay's after show and all of the after shows for all of the earlier guests of every episode that I've ever published. So if you like what I'm doing with this project and you want to support the show, This is the best way to do it for as little as $1 a month. You can contribute more than $1 a month, but even $1 really makes a difference towards subsidizing the cost that I undertake to make this resource publicly available, and you get the after shows. So it's a win for everyone. Well, in conclusion of this public portion of the episode, I hope you were as moved by Jay's story as I was. I was introduced to aspects of our culture that I just didn't know about, maybe because I was sheltered or because I was naive. But I'm so glad to have had this experience because I now feel like I can relate to a whole new group of people and kind of understand their situation, even just a little bit, through what Jay has explained to us. Jay, I'm so grateful that we've connected to have this conversation, but even more, I'm glad that we've become such good friends, even in this short amount of time. And I can't wait to see you at the end of this month at the Sculpture Trails event, Fire at Night. I just can't wait. So thanks again and forever. And now thank you to our top supporters for helping me afford the production costs of this show. And thank you to Sloss Metal Arts for being a top supporter of the podcast and also for your year-round work as a National Center for Iron Casting and Metal Art. Also, thank you to the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance for being a top supporter of the show. And thank you for all of the work that you do in service of the Western region of the U.S. And also, thank you to Crescent Creative for becoming our newest top supporter of the podcast Iron, and also for demonstrating how artists can create an interesting and inspiring living for themselves by producing custom client work. You are a great role model to many of us. So in closing, thank you, Crescent Creative, the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance, and Sloss Metal Arts for supporting the podcast, as well as our other individual supporters on Patreon. The funds that everyone contributes are invaluable to help me to continue this project and producing these episodes. But if you don't have it in your budget to support the podcast on Patreon, I understand. Instead, please share this with somebody that you think will be interested in listening or watching, and I'll appreciate that just as much. Anything and everything helps, and from that I say thank you from the bottom of my heart. If you want to get in touch with me, you can email me at thepodcastiron@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening and watching. I'm sending you all my love always, and I can't wait to share the next episode with you. I'll talk to you soon, and have a great day.